Hi there. It's November the 7th, and we're continuing our journey through the prophecies of Ezekiel. In Hebrew, he's Ezekiel, meaning the Lord will strengthen. And we're looking today at Ezekiel 16 from verse 42 through to the end of chapter 17. So in the balance of chapter 16, where Ezekiel has been likening Israel, or likening Judah and Jerusalem, to this wayward bride of God who's been whoring, who's been prostituting herself to other gods. He continues that picture and is now comparing Jerusalem to her mother, who he says was a Hittite, that is one who wasn't originally, Israel was born somewhere else and brought in, and then also comparing her to sisters who are, on the one hand, Samaria, Shomron in Hebrew, Samaria the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, and also to Sodom, that was the ancient city that was destroyed. So God is comparing comparing Judah to these two other places, and basically saying you're just like your sisters, Judah. You're no better than your sisters. In fact, if they had done the things that you've done, and then it kind of leaves that hanging. If they'd done the kind of things you've done, which begs the question, they would have been in serious trouble too. And so the Lord is speaking to them, speaking to Judah, but he also says later on, he said, "But I will act in a way that you've not acted." Israel, Judah, you have been unfaithful to the covenant. You've been unfaithful to the commitment that I called from you, but I am going to respond by establishing an eternal covenant, by establishing a covenant that can't be broken. And there's this promise coming back that relieves these terrible words that God has said to his wayward bride. And he says, I am going to re-establish my covenant with you and bring you back. We're reminded perhaps of the later prophet in this series of Hosea, who weds a bride who goes off and commits adultery through prostitution, and then he brings her back. It's a similar picture. But God says, I'm going to establish this covenant. I'm determined to have you as my beloved, and I'm going to cover your sins. I'm going to cover over those things, he says at the end of chapter 16. Then chapter 17 is a parable with several pictures in it, and the parable is concerning trees and eagles. And so there's a picture of two eagles. Now the meaning of these parables seems to be Ezekiel is looking at events that have happened and that are happening. And so the first event, this great eagle that he sees that comes and plucks a piece off the top of a cedar in Lebanon. Lebanon, of course, is just to the north of the territory of Israel, but he picks a cedar off, the top of a cedar off of Lebanon, and he carries it away. And that's a picture of King Jehoiakim, who has been taken away into exile, into Babylon, and of course dies there. But then it says he took a seed and he plants it again in the country where it was. And that's a picture of King Zedekiah, Zedekiah, who Babylon then set up as king in Judah as a replacement for Jehoiakim. But then it says that there was another eagle. There's this second eagle, and it's also great and has great plumage, and that's a picture of Egypt to the south. And it says that the roots, that the cedar that was planted there, this little piece of cedar that was planted by the first eagle in its home country, then its roots and its sprouts turn towards the second eagle. It moves towards that, and this is the picture of Zedekiah being untrue and unfaithful to Babylon, and going towards Egypt for help, and trying to get help probably from Pharaoh Hophra. And therefore what God says, that the outcome of this is going to be that there will be judgment. The vine will be torn up, it will wither. Babylon will come in and will bring retribution for Zedekiah's unfaithfulness to the Babylonian Empire, and of course it then results in the destruction of Jerusalem. But it does say towards the end of chapter 17 that God is going to do something to restore. In fact, he's going to do something amazing. He's going to take a topmost tender shoot off the cedar, and he's going to plant it on the highest hill in Israel, which symbolizes Mount Zion, which symbolizes Jerusalem. And this tender branch also is the branch of David. The branch is referred to throughout the prophets as the one, really as Mashiach, as the Messiah, the one who's going to be planted in Jerusalem, who will reign in righteousness forever. And God promises therefore that he will do this He will replace the vine that has been shriveled up, and he will bring back, as it were, he's talking about bringing back and restoring a remnant, so that the people will know, he says, that I am the Lord. Back in the stories of Moses, God revealed himself as the one who cannot turn a blind eye to sin. He says, I am gracious, compassionate, abundant in love, forgiving all kinds of sin and iniquity, but I cannot declare what is guilty innocent. There has to be a covering, but there also has to be a declaration. And God is very much in this scene of the destruction of Jerusalem, allowing the iniquities, allowing the sins of Judah and Jerusalem to unravel and to come back on their own heads. But even in the midst of that, he makes a place for recommitment through his covenant, and he makes a place for redemption, and he makes a place for a remnant to come back. He makes a place really for David, his faithful promise to David that there would be someone reigning on his throne, that will actually come to pass. Of course, in Messiah Jesus, we see that happening. We see the Son of David, the one who is called Wonderful Counselor, being established and reigning still through peace, through justice, through righteousness over his people. Have a very good November 7th.